Hi, everyone. My name's Sophia.
My name is Hank.
And welcome to You Know Me So Well. So, if you listened to our breakup episode last week, which you most definitely should, because that's the premise for everything that comes next, the elephant in the room has been cleared. We did indeed break up. Not a prank. Maybe some people think it is, but it's not. And while it may seem like this was actually a pretty recent thing because the episode just came out last week, we actually broke up over 2 months ago. It is July 12th today, and this episode's going to probably come out sometime at the beginning of August. But yeah, it's actually been a while since we broke up. And in that time, we were doing our separate things. We were in separate places. We were not seeing each other in person. And today we were finally reunited after the breakup, which I'm sure some people are kind of confused about, but whatever, here we are, we're doing it. And we're basically here to work on a bunch of stuff for this rebrand that's happening today. Everything that you're listening to right now is part of the rebrand. And yeah, we are here. This is what we're doing. Yep.
Yeah.
Now, I'm sure you guys are curious as to what's been going on since the breakup, since there's been like a 2-month period. We are going to do an episode about that next week. So you should definitely follow us on whatever streaming platform you're listening to. Hit the notification button. So next week when the episode comes out, you'll know so you can listen to it because we have a lot to share. I feel like a lot has happened in those 2 months. But anyways, today we are talking about, we're just kind of sharing our post-relationship thoughts. We're sort of just, it's a free-for-all. We're freestyling this. Like, we'll just talk about whatever we feel like talking about. And the other thing to mention is this may seem a little redundant. Like, there may be certain things that we talk about in this episode that you heard in our breakup episode. And that's because neither of us have listened to the breakup episode since we recorded it in April. So it's been a while. Honestly, whenever I tell people that we have a breakup episode and they ask like what we talk about in it, I actually don't know because I don't remember what happened in that breakup episode. So yeah, sorry if there are certain things that come up that you heard in the breakup episode. Just means that they were important.
Yeah, for sure.
All right, let's get into it, shall we?
Yeah, let's do it.
So for me personally, as I mentioned in a lot of our episodes, especially the ones where we talked about relationship type stuff, I always mentioned that this was my first relationship. And I know I definitely said this in the breakup episode, but I do still feel very lucky that this was my first relationship. I am very grateful that I ended up with who I ended up with for a first relationship because there's a lot that happened in the relationship that I feel like many people don't get to experience, especially not in a first relationship, but for even their first couple of relationships. And I feel like the things that I learned in our relationship and the things that I experienced sort of have set me up for success to some degree, and also just kind of set me up for holding people to a higher standard than I would have before. And I generally would.
Yeah, I think I can definitely agree with that. I don't know if I talked about this or not, but I've certainly had some interesting relationships before Sophia, to say the least. Not sure what better word to use to describe it. And I think a lot of that left me with like kind of a flawed view of a lot of things about relationships and certain things. And I think being with Sophia and going through what we went through together and just our relationship in general really kind of helped me recover from a lot of that.
One thing, this is going to be really all over the place, so like buckle in for the roller coaster ride of an episode. One thing I've noticed since we broke up and since I've been interacting with other people is having been in a relationship has made me so much more comfortable with men, like the male species. They were completely foreign to me prior to getting into this relationship, even if it meant like a friendship, like interacting with guys. I mean, I had like male friendships and stuff like that. It wasn't like I was lacking in that sense and I couldn't interact with guys at all. But I feel like just in general, And I'm not talking about like talking to guys like in a romantic or like sexual manner. I mean, just talking to guys in general. I feel so much more comfortable and knowledgeable about them, and it makes it easier to like approach a conversation with them. I think I also just feel a lot more confident like talking to them and like asking questions. Like for example, like I'm doing an internship right now, and the internship is like, I don't know, like half girls, half guys. And of course I've found myself in situations where I'm, you know, conversing one-on-one with the guys, and I just feel like I have such an easier time like talking to them and having a normal conversation than I would have if I hadn't been in a relationship. So I do really attribute that to like having been in the relationship and having spent pretty much all of my time for like a year and 4 months with a man. But also like I was I was telling a friend the other day, I was like, you know, like Hank is so man now. You know, he's a man. Like everything I see him do, things I see him post on social media, it's just so man. Like there's no better way for me to describe it. It's just man. And it scares me because because when we were in a relationship, like he was my little pretty princess. And now, and like, sure, like, did he have that man side to him? Of course, like, you know, when he hung out with his friends or interacted with other people, but I didn't really have to see that. You know, I was kind of protected from the man. But now that we're not dating anymore and we're like friends, I get full man from him. Like sometimes he says stuff and I'm like, oh God, oh God, oh God. Like, no, like I didn't sign up for this. I didn't sign up to interact with the man. Like, I want my pretty princess back.
That's certainly something. I don't have too many things to say about that. The thing is, only you got, like, the quote-unquote pretty princess side of me.
No,
like,
I know.
So, like, now that you're not around, you know.
No one gets it?
Yeah.
Oh. Well, yeah, I mean, that makes sense. I wanted it to be reserved for me and me only. Yeah. If you were going to... if it was going to be a free-for-all, then I didn't want it. I mean, I think that's the special thing about being in a relationship. It's like, if it's a good relationship, you get this side of a person that no one else gets. And that's like so special.
For sure. I'd say in general, I think my confidence is just higher. Like I don't put as much of my self-confidence into like the one or two things that I did before, like my body and all that stuff. Like I'm more overall well-rounded in terms of my self-esteem and the way that I view myself. And I mean, I guess like interacting with women, I guess I'm more confident, but like I'm not even really talking about that. I'm just talking about in general, the way that I handle myself on a day-to-day basis and just with other people in general. I do feel definitely more confident than I did, you know, a little over a year and a half ago, which is a great thing. And I do attribute most of that to Sophia in this relationship. Kind of taught me how to value myself a lot in different ways and not, you know, like I said, I'd value myself a little bit before, but like in very specific ways that if something went wrong with it, it would kind of shatter my whole image of myself and everything. But now I have like much more overall well-rounded self-esteem, and it's not all attributed to one or two things. It's just, you know, I'm just overall happier with myself.
For the most part, except for maybe the very beginning, now we're getting deep, now we're getting juicy. I always felt like a bad girlfriend.
No, you weren't a bad girlfriend at all. I think you're way too hard on yourself for, I don't know, a lot. Not to call you out on the podcast, but...
Yeah, I mean, like, I am pretty hard on myself, but I just, there's a reason why I thought it, you know? Like, Hank was, like, at least for the longest time, Hank was always, like, the perfect boyfriend. Like, he really did go above and beyond, and the biggest thing that he did, well, not the biggest thing, but one of the biggest things that he did was he, like, raised my standards exponentially. He set the bar very high at the beginning, and after that I was just sort of expectant of this certain type of behavior and treatment and blah blah blah. And he always like, I feel like you leveled up in many ways. Like you continue to level up. So it was always something new, something exciting. It was like a treasure chest that just kept, you know, bringing in new things, and you open it up every so often and there's a new treasure and all that. And I just always like took it as the narrative was always like Hank was a great boyfriend, like near perfect. And then there was me. And I felt like part of it was just I wasn't experienced in a relationship. And so I didn't really know how to handle things. I didn't know how to handle my emotions. I'm not used to like feeling things for people either, I think. Yeah, I'm not. Like, it's just not my thing. And so I didn't really know how to handle all of that. And so I think I just felt like I was like not a great girlfriend, you know, like I should have been better.
But you were a good boy. Jesus, you were.
Wait, really? I was a good boyfriend?
Yeah.
No way.
No, Sophia was a good girlfriend. Yeah, for sure. I mean,
the one thing is I always wanted the best for Hank, like without a doubt. And I think it came off as harsh at times because I come from a family where like love is shown in a very different, I think this is sort of the like Asian immigrant type family narrative. I've heard it so many times with like, but it's like Hank is just a fully American white man. Like, what is his experience with that? None, until he showed up in my life and he was like, okay, now what? Like, I have this girl on my hands and this is all new. Did it feel like that? Okay. Anyways, the point is the way we show love is very different than the way that I think Hank has experienced love, both in his family and in his past relationships. And so I think that the way that I was showing love sometimes came off as, is that even love? Because you were just not used to it. But to me, that was like the epitome of how I was showing love.
yeah. I guess like, I really didn't mind that like style of like the way you would show me you cared about me and stuff for the most part. I think the only time I ever really cared was like, there's just like a few things about me that I feel like are just like fundamentally me, and that were sometimes tried to change, and I just, I just wanted to be like, feel like completely accepted of that stuff, no matter what maybe seemed like was best for me. Just, some stuff is just me. This is who I am.
I definitely try to change Hank. And for all the girls and guys listening out there, like, but especially the girls, you cannot change a man. You cannot change a man. And I stick by that. Like, you can make some alterations, but you genuinely like can't do like a 180 flip. But I think the reason why I was doing it was because from like pretty much the beginning, Hank had made it very clear that like I was the one for him. He made it very clear, and he never like changed the narrative. Sometimes you like have these situations where it's like one day they're into you, one day they're not, kind of thing. Like, no, like the narrative never changed. So anyways, but the point is, this was kind of sprung on me, and like it's my first relationship and all that. Like, Hank has other relationship experience. He's experienced the ins and outs of different relationships and all that. And for me, I'm like completely new. And actually, really fun story. Right before we started dating, I was kind of like, I'd never been in a relationship before. I was like, do I make this official? Like, do I do it? Or do I wait, and see what happens? Because I'd never like initiated the start of a relationship before. And I knew it was on me because Hank had already asked, and I was kind of, pushing it off a little. And the day, I think I was literally in your room, like before we did the little handshake, I told myself, I was like, well, it's not like you're going to marry this guy, so it's fine. It's a first relationship. Like, it's an experience. And then we shook hands, and that was the start of our relationship. And fun fact, we did shake hands again for the second time when we ended our relationship. Never shook hands in between because that would have been bad luck. Every time I tried to get close to it, Hank would like yank his hand away. But anyways, the point is, it was all kind of sprung onto me super fast, and I wasn't going to ever, or at least I wouldn't have thought about it that early on. But because Hank seemed to just know, I felt like I needed to know as well. And so I tried to really leverage it in my head, and I tried to make every scenario up where this was a possible thing. And it was like, part of me was like, yeah, like maybe in the long term this could be a thing, but I feel like it's my first relationship. I always thought that I would date other I always thought I would date other men. You know, I would have various experiences in dating. I would also be a lot older when I got married. You know, it was kind of like, if we got married, I feel like the timeline would be, you know, getting married by like 25, just because we would have been together for so long at that point. And I wouldn't have wanted to just keep dragging it out, you know, until you're like, have been dating for 10 years and the whole thing. With that being said, basically I was trying to create this narrative in my head where I thought he was the one as well. And with that, it sort of led me to try and change him to be the one. And that was unsuccessful, of course.
Yeah. I mean, I guess like you were successful in changing like some aspects of me, like the stuff that I didn't really like care about, and like, but it was important to you, and like all that stuff didn't matter, or like to me at least. I think towards the end it really just only kind of became the stuff that I've always had like self-esteem issues, and I guess it's like it became about changing the stuff that were just deep down fundamentally who I was as a person, and like how I like identified myself and like knew who I was. And it was frustrating, to be honest. Like I think that, you know, you were saying earlier, like sometimes like the way you love doesn't feel like love, and I guess I wanted to like feel like I wanted to just feel like it was okay to be me in those aspects and not have to change those things. Like I could just kind of stay with that part of myself, because it's been who I am for forever, for as long as I can remember. And yeah, I guess, I don't know, towards the end I just stopped really feeling like appreciated, or like I could like just be me and everything. And like I don't know, I guess I like just kind of pulled away because of all that. Let me explain more about that. I don't blame Sophia for any of this. Like, she knows what she wants in certain aspects of stuff that I just couldn't do, and that's okay. It's not her fault. It's just, you know, there's some things I couldn't change that were important to her, and like that's not her fault at all.
Yeah, I think for the longest time, continued to hold on to the narrative that Hank could be the one with time, I guess, and change. So obviously that doesn't really qualify him as the one anymore. But the point is, I thought I was like trying to come up with the point is I was really trying to like make that the narrative. And one day and this was shortly before I think I started to hit that point where I was like, this relationship is kind of coming to an end. And it was like a couple months before the actual breakup, but I think for a while I sort of knew that the end was near and we were just sort of approaching it. But there was just this one day where I finally kind of hit this wall, and I was like, he is not the one. Like, if he were the one, you wouldn't have to question it all the time, the relationship. You know, you wouldn't have all these questions about it. I think the main thing is just that throughout the relationship, I was constantly questioning things. And part of it was just because of how new it all was, and I just wasn't sure what was right and wrong and the whole thing. But at the same time, I always told myself, you know what, if you're questioning it and if you have certain feelings about it, that probably means something. You know, it's kind of like a gut instinct and you have to go with that. And for the longest time, I would try and push those things away. But it's like at the end of the day, you know, if you know, and you can't do anything about it.
Yeah. No, I agree. I think, to be honest, at the end of the day, like, we were always very different people, but I honestly did believe that for a long time it just kind of like worked in a weird way. Like, I don't know, like I know she opened me up to a lot of new experiences and stuff that, you know, I never would have done otherwise, and certainly helped me kind of like grow my boundaries as a person. But I think like just like at deep down, like just like at least right now, there was just something that there were just too many differences.
What I think is the relationship that me and Hank had together was inspiring, not just to ourselves, but to other people. I had many people, I was actually just talking to a friend the other day and she was saying, you know, I honestly like, you guys just seemed great, you know, like, and all that. And like, he seemed like such a great partner. And I was like, yeah, I mean, he was like, obviously we broke up and there's reasons, but at the end of the day, like if I look at the relationship from a bird's eye view and I take into account everything that happened, like it was overall a really great relationship. And I can't let, you know, the things that happened towards the end and what caused the breakup to like cloud my vision on the relationship as a whole. Obviously, like at this point, many times I think of it as the perspective of we recently broke up and it's been sort of just like a trying to figure out like how to deal with all of that and like what kind of happened at the very end that caused it. But like, you know, this is post-relationship thoughts. Like this is a bird's eye view. This is not what happened at the end. Next week we'll talk about like the whole breakup part. But anyways, yeah, I think we had a really great relationship and I think we were both lucky to have that. It was something that we both needed in our lives. And at the end of the day, I think the biggest thing was just we were getting to different points in our lives, and it just seemed like keeping it up would be a pretty difficult thing to do. And
it has already been kind of difficult.
Yeah, it definitely had been difficult, just because we were in such different places, and this whole thing was going to continue for a long, long time. And I mean like years. You know, we also live in different places. As we've learned, both being in the relationship and being outside of the relationship, we do not do well with distance at all. Distance is like our worst enemy. And, you know, it's really hard to bring that into a relationship because it really does cloud the relationship as a whole if you have something that's kind of bringing so much negative energy to it. And so there was that. You know, we knew that we'd both be busy with our own lives. We'd be in school. We wouldn't have as much time to see each other, you know, maybe to talk, to kind of just be there for each other. And the other thing is like I'm graduating next year, whereas Hank is actually just starting off college in the fall, which is exciting for him. But that would mean that like in a year's time, we would be in such different places. And I think that could hold ourselves back, you know. Do you miss being in a relationship?
The latter parts of it, no. But like how it was at the beginning, yeah.
Yeah. We had like a whirlwind of a romance at the beginning. I mean, I don't know if that's like with every honeymoon phase. Again, don't have any experience with that besides the one that was in our relationship. But yeah, no, things were really great until like month 7. And that's when things started to go a little downhill from there.
Not necessarily coincidence that perfectly coincides with us going along this.
Yeah, that's like the main reason why I think everything went down south from there. And like we had like periods after we went long distance where things were really good and we were kind of riding a high, but you know, highs and lows. So it didn't last forever. Yeah. And then I guess we can cover a little bit like the podcast. Like, why did we decide to continue it? Well, I think the biggest thing is okay, honestly, when we started the podcast, I sort of thought this was going to be our common ground. Like, we were going to have this one thing together. And I was hoping, honestly, that it would partially repair our relationship. Like, it would give us something. I mean, like, at that point, our relationship didn't need a ton of repairing, but I was hoping that it would repair like the small parts that were starting to kind of diminish or fail. But I think at the end of the day, it was something fun that we were doing, and we both enjoyed it, and we both had dreams for it, and we kind of knew that even if we broke up, we would try and find a way to make it work. But I feel like it was like, it wasn't exactly part of our relationship per se. It was like an additional thing we were doing. I don't know. It's so hard to explain that. But the point is, like, the reason why we decided to continue the podcast is because we both have hopes and dreams, and we both, maybe delusionally, but I like to think it's not actually delusional. We both think that this podcast can go places, and great places. And I can't speak for Hank because Hank doesn't give as much excitement as I do, but ever since we broke up, I feel like I have poured my heart and soul into this podcast. It's kind of like whatever got lost or got taken away by not being in a relationship anymore kind of went into the podcast. And it has now become a huge dream of mine to make this like a reality for, I want to say us, but long-term me, because like I said, I'm going to be graduating in a year's time, and I'm doing corporate internship right now. And I'm telling you right now, like, I do not want to sit in corporate in a year's time. Like, I do not want to go into corporate. I will do everything in my power to make that not happen. And so in that whole sense, this is sort of my way out, and it's something I love. It's something I'm incredibly passionate about, and I have this hope that we can make it big and make something out of it. And I can also work on other things like my YouTube channel, which, by the way, I totally meant to mention this like at the beginning of the podcast where I was mentioning that we just got reunited. I actually filmed a video today, so you should go check it out. It'll be on my YouTube channel, not the You Know Me So Well YouTube channel. So my YouTube channel is just my first and last name, Sophia Jan. Go check it out.
I do have big dreams. I just think that we have a lot of consistent growth and a lot of growing momentum, and it can get big and go a lot of places and give us each kind of other avenues to grow our other passions as well, kind of out of this.
Yeah. So with that being said, thank you so much for listening to our podcast.
Yeah,
if you're following us, thank you for following us.
Yeah.
If you've rated us, you should rate us. I don't know where you can see the ratings, but you should rate us. You'd be so kind. And also, just like, we'd love for you to interact with us, like on social media, or we want to start doing Q&As at the end of our videos. So send in questions. We'll add like a Q&A section to this episode, but also, like, you can always find us on one of our social media platforms and DM us, and we'll take those questions as well. Because we want you guys to get more involved. I think it'll be fun to kind of give back to our listeners and be able to interact with them, and just like build a community. So yeah, I think we could obviously say a lot more in terms of post-relationship thoughts, because it was a long time, a lot happened, but we're not gonna bore you with all the gory details. So welcome to the new era of You Know Me So Well. Everyone get excited, because we're excited. And
not every episode will be this serious.
No, definitely not. But we definitely will have more like fun conversations, that aren't just like us sharing advice or sharing our experiences and all that. Yeah. So next week's episode is going to be really fun, I think.
Yeah.
I'm excited for that one.
Yeah.
So, all right. Well, thank you so much for listening. Like I said, follow us wherever you want to follow us, and keep up with us. And also we have a lot of content that we put out on YouTube and TikTok and stuff like that. So you can go check out like the behind the scenes of putting this all together, and I don't even know what we're working on, but we're working on stuff. So you'll see stuff. So
Yeah.
okay. Now I'm doing the final goodbye. Thank you so much for listening. We will see you next week, and bye.